Right, this is episode 5 of Villaincast. It's a podcast with myself, Chris Paynes. Um, Shout out to our sponsors. Yep, that's all the sponsors dealt with. So this episode 5, I've got Josh McKinney. He is the host of I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show, which is a tremendous podcast. I highly recommend you go listen to it. I'll let him continue the rest. Hey, Josh.
Hey man, how are you doing? Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for giving me your time. I know you may possibly end up training at some point soon, so I hope I won't take up too much of your time.
I've got a while. Sorry, my dog's in the background barking.
That's
He always
cool.
likes to do that to start out most episodes. He likes to say, "Hey, don't forget about me." Um, but yeah, I actually have quite a bit of time now because I didn't realize that I knew this, but I didn't think about it. The last time you were on my show, if
Hmm.
people haven't heard that, I really recommend listening to that episode. Um, we went back and forth on Instagram, and I said, "Oh, you're like 7 hours ahead of me." Well, I didn't think about it, but you guys don't have daylight savings time, and
Oh, we do.
so oh, you do?
We do. Yeah.
Then is your guys' daylight savings time different than mine? Because now you're only 6 hours ahead of
Five.
me.
What time is it where you are right now?
So right now it's, or wait, no, now you're,
I think 5 hours.
dude, I don't know. I mean, right now it's 3:18 our time. What time is it yours?
3:18. It's 9:18 here, so it must be 6 now.
Six.
When do you
Okay,
when
then
do you change to summertime and go out forward an hour?
we go in the spring, like May 21st, something like that.
Okay, we go in March. I'm pretty sure ours is like in like maybe 1 or 2 weeks time.
I could be wrong. Maybe ours is 1 or 2 weeks time. Maybe we just cut this part out. Maybe I look stupid on it. Who cares? But regardless, I have time. I have more time to talk now, so we're
Perfect.
set. But also thought I would mention I'm on like episode 80 of my podcast, and I still don't have any sponsors either. I had a sponsor, and they offered to sponsor like I don't even remember how many episodes, and then they didn't pay me, and so I was like, oh, I guess they're not sponsoring the show then. I guess that I guess that I guess that I should have gotten that in writing or something. I don't know. And
You got the whole part where it says like, I'll like advertise your product. You just forgot the part where, oh yeah, you have to pay me as well. It's like
yeah, it was
they just thought you were a really nice guy.
I thought yeah, like man, I don't know, maybe they sent the check to the wrong Josh McKinney. I don't really know what it was.
Possibly. Or you just, yeah. I imagine they just thought you were just a really nice guy who thought, oh, this guy must really like our product. He's just going to talk about us on his podcast for
Uh-huh.
nothing. You're just a good person. So yeah, you run the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. So yeah, quick so what's your history in Jiu-Jitsu? So you started roughly, I know we talked about this on the podcast I appeared on. Yeah, I think you've been in Jiu-Jitsu probably about a year longer than I have.
Yeah, so I started training like officially 13 years ago. When I was a kid though, maybe like 7 or 8 years old, uh, my dad would buy the Gracie in action VHS tapes, and we would watch them, and we would do like Gracie Jiu-Jitsu self-defense in our garage. And we did that for a few years. And so that was my first introduction into Jiu-Jitsu. But and we would roll the same way that other people would just kind of roll in their garage or whatever. And
Hmm.
um, but we never really went anywhere officially and started really training under somebody who actually knew Jiu-Jitsu until I was 14, and that would have been 13 years ago. And so we started out. My mom actually made me. I didn't want to do it, and I was overweight, and she was like, "Hey, you're gonna do something. You don't play any sports. You don't do anything." And so I went and tried out jiu-jitsu. Went my first class, just absolutely loved it, and have been doing it ever since.
I think you just aged yourself in the relation of this sport, considering you mentioned VHS and Gracie in action videos.
Uh-huh.
I imagine to most people from about purple belt down, they have no idea what that means. Like, let alone
So
the VHS part.
it's
Um, so I'm sure you've probably heard about this, anyone who's listened to this podcast, but it's that's pretty much the only way of getting any sort of like input back in the before 2010. Like, YouTube really wasn't a good place to come and get any content back in those days. So it was really VHS, maybe some privately hosted videos, maybe Submissions 101 if you're
mm-hmm.
feeling fancy, and books. And now there's God knows how many podcasts. There's fanatics. There's millions of jiu-jitsu videos. There's flow grappling. I don't think you could get any more content these days. But back when we started, I mean, I try and tell it to my students now. I don't think you. It's almost like, you know, the good old days. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
don't know how hard we had it. I had to try and figure everything out from a book.
And man, that was really my first jujitsu book that we ever got. We got I want to say, I don't think it was Mastering the Twister. What did he do before? What did Eddie Bravo do before Mastering the Twister? It was Mastering the Rubber Guard or something like?
I
No,
think
it
it's
was
like Mastering
Mastering.
the Half Guard or Lockdown or something.
It was what I bought was Mastering the Twister, where he shows you a bunch of entries into Twister, and
Yeah.
then he doesn't show you how to finish it. And he's like, if you want to
Yeah.
learn more about the Twister, buy Mastering the Rubber Guard. And so we had both of those, but it was hard to come across techniques, right? But
Yeah.
now I guess they deal with, like, our students, they deal with something different where it's not as hard to like come across techniques. It's hard to know which technique is good and which one is bad.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I see people post on social media all the time stuff, and I'll watch it like, dude, that won't work. There's no way that you would get that to work.
Yeah. I think that's. I think, like, you've touched on something there. Like, you know, the people who were releasing books back or, you know, the VHS tapes when we started out were people who were, you couldn't get more legit. You know, okay, Eddie Bravo, but also Andre Galvao, maybe BJ Penn. It was like, you know, guys who'd really set the stage for what jiu-jitsu was going to be. And now any flexible, fast person with an Instagram account can put up a 30-second video of them doing some sort of inverted magic,
Mm-hmm.
and people go for it. And they get tens of thousands of likes and views, and then you have white belts suddenly rock up the following day trying to try that stuff out. Um, yeah, I think you've hit it there. Like, it's almost like this bite-sized social media has almost polluted jiu-jitsu a little bit, and we've got to try
I,
and find a way of scraping that pond scum out.
I agree. That's one of the hardest things with actually I had a conversation with one of my students last night. He was saying, I'm trying this arm lock, and he's showing me what it is. And he's like, and it's not working. And I said, well, that's because it doesn't work, dude. Like, you're trying something that doesn't work. And so sometimes it's like, it's really tough, and you don't even think about, oh, this move doesn't work. Like, I saw somebody do it online, but they did it online to somebody who wasn't resisting
Mm.
and was, like, setting them up for the move. And so they're expecting it to work the same. And that becomes the problem, is it doesn't work the same. And I think that can be another, it's just, for us, we had to search out technique. We were just like, any technique would work because we had so little technique. Even, and it sounds crazy, but even in 2008 and 2009, there just wasn't a ton of stuff. You were still, people were showing heel hooks and your mind was blown,
Mm.
and even later on, it was like that. And I think what happens is that, like, that transition, as there became more content, it became, well, what should I be, using? What should be the content that I should be trying to focus on?
I think as well, this is quite a weird, almost like history repeating itself here, is that, like I say, you have these, like, you know, quick, flashy things that don't work. And you almost, I wouldn't want to try and compare it to a traditional martial art, so to speak. Like, you know, there's obviously lots of Aikido where it looks flashy but doesn't work. But that, you can't really see where that came from. Like maybe further down the line in non-recorded history. I think the easiest way of like comparing it to something that happened more recently is the divergence from freestyle and working wrestling to WWE. Like you had a core principles, and you've got a core grappling, you know, combat sport, which does work. And then because if you go back to say earlier 20th century, 19th century, you had carnivals and you had like traveling catch wrestlers, and because it was a show and people want to see more flashy stuff, just to keep people entertained, that's when you had more professional wrestling show up. And then there was that divergence of people wanting to do more flashy stuff, which became eventually WWE, WWF, whatever. And then you had the purists who kind of stayed on. It was catch wrestling and freestyle. And it's almost like the same thing has happened again in jiu-jitsu. Like people don't want to see the core. I mean, maybe I've set myself up in a weird, terrible niche then, that I do all the boring stuff in jiu-jitsu where you could play completely still and talk about concept, and people just care about, you know, mad inverted entries into heel hooks that never work. Which is kind of sad, really. Maybe this second divergence is happening and we're currently watching it.
Man, that's what I always tell. I talk about on my podcast. I tell my students, just in everything, you never watch a video that isn't movement, right? Every video we watch is like movement. You know, that's what catches our eye is movement. And the problem is when we're doing jujitsu, when you or I are doing jujitsu, especially with somebody that we are like better than, we aren't moving very much. You know, you're not needing to. You don't need to be explosive. You don't need to use the energy. A lot of times they're moving where you want them to be anyway. And you know, you're letting them waste energy by controlling them and stuff. And figuring that out as a student of jujitsu is like, it's got to be so hard, because I mean, everything we see, every video is a new move, is a new technique. And I think it becomes hard to like, for instance, it's not how to escape everything, it's how to defend everything. How to escape?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
How to
So
defend everything,
yeah, so that, you know, people see the title, they click on it, right? And then a lot of people go, "Oh my gosh, it's an hour." You know, I don't have that much time, right? And so,
yeah.
but like, man, if you would have just filmed this is a 2-minute video, then I would have watched it, right? But you can't get that something as deep of a concept across as to how to defend everything, and the importance of it, and actually teach people, unless it's like longer. But it's kind of like you almost have to take a step back, I think, to learn jujitsu online now, and to be really okay with studying it and saying, you know, I want to learn what really makes jujitsu work.
Well, this is kind of then leads on to one of the questions I had like planned, is that you obviously run the Jiu-Jitsu Show. Was there any relationship between how you feel about jiu-jitsu this way, like how the online mass market of information, and why you started the podcast?
Yeah, there was. I actually so you know, I had wanted to do something online. If you went to my Instagram, and like there's a ton of posts on my Instagram. But if you scrolled back far enough, you would find that it wasn't jujitsu for a very long time. Like I was just posting like funny videos, like and stupid skit type stuff all the time. And um and I kind of fell off that, and I decided, man, I really would like to, as I got better, you know, like when I was really right when I was around brown belt, it's like, man, I would really like to do something. I would like to put out some type of content when it comes to jiu-jitsu. And it's really hard to put out content, because there's almost like an entrapment in the jiu-jitsu content world. Is you sometimes you'll lose yourself. you'll lose what you were hoping to, to convey. Right. So, for you, you're the concepts that you teach, like what happens is you're teaching these concepts and you get 300, 400. I saw that you're over 1,000 subscribers on your
Yeah,
YouTube.
finally. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome,
Getting
man.
there now.
Yeah, congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
But that is honestly, trust me, on YouTube, I've like 300 and something. That's like the hardest thing. People follow me on Instagram all the time, but like Instagram isn't monetized. That it sucks. So, but like you get to those 1,000 YouTube video or those 1,000 subscribers, and people are really loving what you are putting out. And then maybe you decide one day, like, oh, I'm going to put out a video of me doing a berimbolo back take, and it gets a bunch of views. And then what happens a lot of the time is you're like, man, even though I don't really use this kind of jiu-jitsu, it's what's getting views. That's what I should be posting. And man, and so many people that I see like that came up, and then all of a sudden they get a taste of, oh, this is what people actually like, and then they sell out. And that's what was my big thought on, I wanted to make the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show on YouTube, because problem solving and like having a questioning mindset is one of the big things that I was, preach to getting better. All we're trying to do is, every time we're doing jiu-jitsu, is we're asking each other questions and see if the other person can answer them. Right. And so that was kind of the idea. And I wanted to do it as a YouTube series. And I tried it. I filmed like 6 episodes. And at the time, I don't know. I didn't understand enough about video. I didn't really enjoy it. And so I was like, I don't think that this is going to be it. And then the podcast idea came about, and I started to do the podcast, and it was something that was easy for me to do. And I really enjoyed sitting down for an hour or two with people and just talking about jiu-jitsu. And so that was really like where that whole idea was came from the jiu-jitsu. Is I really was afraid of being a sellout eventually, because I saw what was getting views and things. And so I figured if I could create a better brand with talking about my ideologies of jiu-jitsu and things like that, then I could go into the video space, which is really what I'm doing now, which is what I'm trying to kind of start to do now.
It always makes me laugh every time I speak to you. We've kind of like with the across the pond equivalents of each other, because I was obviously been making the YouTube content for the like concepts I have rattling around my brain, and then trying to find ways of like making things that actually what people are interested in. I've one of the main ways that's kind of given me loads of interest loads of ideas for content right now is I've got a Discord channel which has got like a growing member base over the past like even 2 weeks. It's like it's growing daily, and they keep giving me ideas. Oh, can you talk about this? And it's questions I would have never asked myself. But then on the flip side, that was kind of the purpose of this podcast, was like, why not straight technical information on jiu-jitsu, but like a wider holistic lifestyle kind of understanding of jiu-jitsu. I've just had Charles Harriott on last week, because he traveled around the world doing jiu-jitsu, and I was like, how do you do that? Then I had Preet on, and it was, how do you change your coaching style, especially at a black belt level, to be more investigative instead of just churning out the same techniques to the same students? How do you then try and fix the holes that you can like see in your own jiu-jitsu? And so I know what you mean. It'd be so easy just to I say sell out and do berimbolo, back takes, leg locks, short clips on Instagram with more bombastic podcasts. So it's funny you say these things. I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what he means. It's the same stuff here.
Yeah, and it's like you're starting your podcast, and you haven't, in your first 5 episodes, you don't have you're not going after just like big fish of your podcast, right? You're going after people you want to talk to. And at first, like in my podcast, I really wasn't sure how to do it. And I was like, man, I don't know. I don't even know who I should talk to. And I started to, reach out to people, and I talked to some good competitors and some bigger name guys. And it was weird that a lot of them, I think, were just a product of their environment and being really good athletes. And
Mm.
so we would have, and so this was, I always finish each episode with how do you suck less at jiu-jitsu. It's the name of the show. How do you suck less? And a lot of people, their answer was not very good. And it's not like me trying to talk bad about anybody. It just wasn't very, um, I don't know. It was almost as if certain people had never had to ask themselves, like, how do I get better? They were just able to just be there and have good enough coaches and be good enough athletes. And so then as I started to see that, and I started to get to see who I really enjoyed talking to on the podcast and stuff, then I started to find guys like, like having a guy like you on. I was like, somebody had sent me your, one of your podcasts, and I listened to it, and I'm like, oh, I gotta talk to this guy. I think this would be really fun. And, we had a really good conversation. And I think we talked for like 45 minutes after the podcast was over too, just about jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. Exactly. And so it was like, it was just, I think it was really, just really, cool to start to see that and see like, oh, this is what I, like, obviously we're both with our podcast. We're trying to get sponsors. We're trying to make money with your YouTube videos, the stuff I post on Instagram. Yeah, we're trying to make money, but not at the cost of selling out. It like, we're trying to, for guys like you and I, we're trying to get out our opinion, our thought that we think would help people a lot in the art that we love.
No, exactly. And again, I think it's I had a good conversation because I do like a weekly thing of my students, my brown belt Naki. And one of the things we kind of posed, I think it was on the first one we did, was obviously we come from a more conceptual kind of ideology when it comes to preaching and practicing jiu-jitsu. But of the merit of when you have really good competitors and people who can just like clone their jiu-jitsu into people, as in you have these gyms where every student does exactly what the coach does, and it's just a carbon copy left and right. And you have these guys, obviously, if you can create a clone of a really good competitor, you're going to have really good competitors. Mm-hmm. And playing a bit of like devil's advocate on it, is that such a bad thing? Like, they're winning, but is that what you want out of jiu-jitsu? Like, and that then became the interesting sticking point, is that like you say, is it about sucking less at jiu-jitsu or becoming a good competitor? I think those two things are not the same.
I agree.
A competitive sport, it's a sport that we play. I don't think being a competitor and sucking less at jiu-jitsu. You hit the nail on the head when you said Ganassi's great competitors. What advice can you give to suck less? It's like, I don't think they actually know, because it's not the same question as what they got there in the first place.
That's very true. I think I think that is something that is important to note, is the reason that we would want to have a deeper understanding of jiu-jitsu is so that we can learn on our own, which is something that, someone like you has had to do, right? You've had to learn on your own. And so you needed a conceptual understanding of jiu-jitsu. Imagine what it would be like if you had a coach that, like, when you were coming up, that just every time you had any question, you just said, hey, coach, what do I do here? He just shows you, okay, and then you just put it in your game. And you didn't need to learn anything else. You just, it was just question and answer, and you're good. and I would argue, one of my friends made this analogy before, but he talks about it, he was saying like, you know, if you always have food, you're probably not going to be a very good hunter. But he said
Mm.
when you're starving, those are the people that are good hunters and that really understand. And he said, and you can't, once they learn that, you can't take it away from them. And it's the same thing with jiu-jitsu, with learning how to actually get good at jiu-jitsu. Once you start to learn how to get good, that can't be taken away from you. Even if you go to a great training room, then you still know how to get good. And
Yeah.
it's even more helpful to be in that great training room.
I think that's I say that's an interesting then, because I recently had a conversation with one of my purple belts, and they were asking like, what do I need to do to get the brown belt? And I said, don't just be a technique collector. Understand, like, when in the conversation of a role, how to actually answer the questions that I'm posing to you by actually thinking of the answer, not just bringing one back from memory, like, oh, this is the answer to this, but you don't know why. Again, I think it's maybe an issue that there's so much information readily available that people haven't had to think as much. They can just take an answer, which there wasn't that option as much when I was starting out. There wasn't. If you want, like, if you thought, oh, I need a new half guard pass, so I'm going to go on the internet and look for a new half guard pass. There's maybe one other video you hadn't seen, and I was like, okay, this isn't an answer for me. Then I need to figure out something else entirely with this. But now it's like there's a million different instructors showing a million different half guard passes. You just, oh, this will work next time. You have no idea why it works though.
That's so true. Let me ask you this though. So you, I think that you would probably consider yourself like a conceptual teacher, correct? That would be,
Yeah.
would you, how, if you had to put it into words, how do you come across concepts? Like, how do you get to like a concept that, whether it's a position or, it's I was just watching your video about inside guards and outside guards. Where did, like, are you in the shower and that comes into your head, or is it training, or are you trying to think of it? How do those usually come to you?
Most of the concepts I have are from teaching white belts, day one beginners.
Mhm.
Like, how can I streamline this information to you? So I've almost set my stall up as, I don't want to just carbon copy jiu-jitsu over to you. I just want to give you the tools from here. How do I explain these tools to you? And I think from there, having to do it repeatedly, because I don't shirk off, to the blue belts, to the purple belts, or the brown belts. I'll go take these beginners. Like, if there's ever a class on, like, and we've got some newbies in, I'll have the brown belts go run like advanced drills, and I'll take the beginners. And then I've got to try and explain to these beginners, like, okay, here's the reason why this exists. And when you've got someone who has no idea about jiu-jitsu, like, you've really got to understand your field deeply to explain it to a non-person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so your gym back home, like, how do you what's kind of your methodology of bringing in new people? As
Like
in,
getting them
what
to
do you go
understand.
through? Yeah. So you say you've got a brand new person, then, if that's the way I've kind of settled on. So what do you do that's different? As in, when you have a new person come in, like, how do you go about explaining like your jiu-jitsu to them, or like try and bring them up to scratch faster?
So at my gym, I kind of have like a formula for teaching.
Hmm.
I don't, man, I think it's really hard for people to get much, to understand really in depth of jujitsu, or at least start to understand what jujitsu really is, even before a year of training. Like, like if somebody really starts to understand it before a year, they're probably a pretty quick learner, right? And so how I have my classes broke down, and I teach at my school 3 days a week. I have my dad is a black belt. He teaches 2 days. I have another black belt that teaches with me, and then I have a purple belt that's been teaching some of the classes. And we have a bunch of classes, but we all stay on the same position for a month. Okay. So
Yeah.
let's say that position is closed guard. And we'll do 2 weeks of top, like 2 weeks of dealing with it from top, opening the closed guard, passing the closed guard, 2 weeks of breaking posture, creating angles, and finishing from the closed guard. And then we actually, like I said, we spend a month on each of them. We only work 5 positions. Okay. So we only work, what a lot of people would consider, we only work at our gym basics. We do not have advanced class. Advanced class for us is our guys training live and then asking questions to each other, to the coaches. What happened there? What could I have done better there? How could I figure this out? Right. I think that's when they really start to create their own game after that first year. But we do 5 positions. So we'll have 5 months of those same exact 5 positions in order. Then our 6th month is a miscellaneous month. So let's say the miscellaneous, we're going to do leg locks, right? These guys, I want them to have a little bit better of an understanding of the leg locks, or there's a tournament coming up that, and I don't feel comfortable with some of them getting their legs ripped off or something, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the first 6 months. And then your next 6 months, we're going to go through, or at least your next 5 months, we're going to go through those same 5 positions again. And I always find the second time is when, because these people have still been rolling live. They've been getting in these positions. They've been told things. Usually they're told the exact same things again 6 months later on that same position. And that's when all the aha moments start to come into play. And they're like, oh, I get what, I get what you mean about elbow knee space when I'm in side control now. I get why that's important. You had said it a bunch, but I couldn't even apply it then. And so that's kind of how that's kind of how I run mine. And I used to try to do, kind of, here's the beginner stuff, here's the advanced stuff. And I kind of stopped catering to my advanced guys and kind of said, hey, by the time you're like a mid-level blue belt, you should know how to learn, and you always have access to all, we have quite a few higher belts. You always have access to those guys. Everybody's very good about helping. But that's how I've run mine for the last like 3.5 years now. And when I switched from that, like, cause it was random at first. Like, I was still trying to find how I like to teach and things, but it was still very random. When I found like just keeping that formula of only working the same 5 positions and then having a miscellaneous month, staying on them for long periods of time. If I break it down even further, I teach each class. We work 3 moves and 1 concept that will cover that is shown in those 3 moves. Like the reason I do that. So like, for instance, we were going over half guard like last week. So we were like, okay, so, half guard, I brought up how you had the inside guards and the outside guards, because I have something similar that I've been kind of messing with too. And, like I call all the half guards split leg guards. And, like the rule, like the big conceptual rule of the split leg guards is that we have 4 points on our back. We have 2 shoulders and 2 butt cheeks. 4 of those points cannot be on the ground at the same time. Only 2 of them can be on the ground at the same time. So if we're playing butterfly, we're sitting on both butt cheeks, right? If we're playing, and so like just learning that and teaching that concept, and I show 3 moves that apply to that, 3 moves that show that this concept works. And so even if maybe some of the guys don't like any of the moves, at least they have absorbed the concept of, well, when I am in half guard, when I'm flat on my back, this is bad. Even if they don't know a great way to get out of that, they at least know the fight. They at least know that goal. But that's, like I said, that's how I've been teaching for a while now at my gym. And I've really I've had more success with competitors, and I really noticed that guys seem to get better on their own so much more now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've pretty much again reached similar conclusions. I think maybe I'm just a bit more, I don't know, like a hippie or something in my gym. Like, I will not teach techniques. You have to just learn concepts, and figure it out from there. But like I say, it's that trying to arm people with the ability to do sums, than just giving them sums to practice.
Uh-huh.
Instead of just like return, like you ask them a math question, they just return a memory of a question they've done previously. It's actually how do you actually figure out these maths questions. Have you found that, like, doing the podcast and talking to the number of coaches you has that affected how you teach, how you teach? Have you taken information from the podcast, like incorporate that into your style?
Yes, very much. I, like, I'm trying to think of what would be one of the simplest ways. I always recommend to my students, like, listening to, if I ever do a podcast that, like, I really feel like people would learn something from. I always
Hmm.
recommend doing that, because a lot of times we will talk, on the podcast, just about little concepts, just little things that, um, you know, a lot of times with a concept, you already know it. It's just never been put into words.
Mm.
It's never been explained to you that way. And then it makes sense. And then it's much easier to use. Um, but that's happened quite a few times on my show. I specifically, and I uh, did an episode. Man, it was probably like 4 months ago, something like that.
Yeah, I
Maybe, I
think
don't know.
even
I'm
longer. It
just
might have been like middle of the year or something, like summertime.
Oh, okay. So then,
Feels
yeah.
like
So
ages.
it was longer ago than I thought. But so we do, you and I do an episode, and like, just I noticed, even without sitting down and thinking, like, man, I'm really gonna add this. I found myself even more than usual talking about the elbow knee space and explaining the elbow knee space. You're right. Because, like, a lot of times with a concept, when it's the concept that's in the back of your mind, you're just relating that so much. Like, you're just
Mm.
pushing your students towards that. Like, yeah, well, that's, why were you in this triangle? Well, because they got their foot on your hip, like, you should not have you got to control, you got to close your elbow knee space there. And, well, they ask, how do you do it? And I said, I don't know. What do you think? And then
Mm.
they start to figure it out, right? And so there are a lot of times on the podcast that I've had that. A lot of times, I do have a lot of competitors at my gym. A lot of times when it comes to competition, you get people that have some really good mindsets on competing. And so I will always kind of push and recommend my students, like, hey, check this out. This might be really helpful for you.
Mm.
And then, like, I think too, it's specific, because maybe I have like an older guy on the show, and he's talking about what it's like to train injured or something like that. And I'll tell some of my older guys, like, hey, you've been dealing with this. This guy would be good for you to listen to.
Mm. Yeah, I think again circles around to, I think something we probably mentioned on the last one is um, you are from like a more new age mentality when it comes to this sport. I mean, this, a lot of what you're saying, if you were to explain this to like a uh, traditional, I don't know, a Ragan karate or whatever guy, 10 years ago, this seems so alien. This idea that you can uproot everything about what you do as a style on new information, instead of it being um, at the almost like gospel of, this was written, this is how it was told, this is how it was passed to me, and you will pass it down to your students, and this, that, and the other. I mean, you had still some of that with older, maybe styles of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where, first lesson, close guard, um, no leg locks, maybe ankle locks, and if you go for a leg lock from guard, you're scum. And gis only have to be white, and it's like, that's all, and you have to bow to a picture of Elio at the beginning. There's some of those obviously still exist, and I do come across them every now and then. But you tell me, like, obviously you speak to a lot more people than I do, or maybe we just attract the right people. Do you find that jiu-jitsu is moving more into that direction now, as in you have like yourself who's teaching more like you've almost admitted that you, even at black belt, you don't know everything, and there's that vulnerability to your students, like, I'm going to get better, like, do you feel that jiu-jitsu is going that way? Do you feel that there is more innovation now, or do you feel that it's just kind of like going to happen and rebound? Or I'm just trying to find a better way of explaining it. Do you feel that it's going to carry on this kind of level of innovation, or do you feel there's going to hit a point where it'll feel like we've moved too far away from what Brazilian jiu-jitsu kind of was, and we have to like stick to those kind of styles? Or do you think there'll be a divergence? You'll have more innovative styles and more traditional styles, and there'll be a war?
So this is just my opinion on it, that I think what's going to happen first is, I think it's going to split more than it has. There was kind of a split in jiu-jitsu, and you hear about this less and less. You see people online, at least for me, I see people less and less online talking about the self-defense versus competitive jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
That I feel like was more when we were
Yeah.
starting
Oh, completely.
jiu-jitsu, right? And I think, like, as you get to 2014, 15, 16, you really stopped hearing about that as much. Now, I don't really, I mean, I have like Facebook ads that people will comment on and be like, well, yeah, how would you defend against a stomp to the head? Like,
Yeah.
dude,
Yeah.
I don't even want to talk to you, but
Oh
like,
God.
um, like that was kind of, that there was that, I think, we kind of had two separate groups, but now, even like, I mean, I have friends that have, like, Gracie Academy schools, and, they're teaching guard passing, right? Which really wouldn't make a lot of sense if you were self-defense only, because who's playing guard in a street fight, right? That you're getting in a fight with. And so,
Yeah.
you just had, it just made sense to have some level of competitive jiu-jitsu, because to get better, you have to resist what your training partners are doing. And so that it is bound to happen, right? So with kind of like, I guess, with the styles of teaching, and just, I think, like, I see like Flow Grappling tries to push it as the American jiu-jitsu movement. I think that there probably will be a little more push to, hey, choose a side. Either you're bowing to the picture of Elio before each class, or you worship Gordon Ryan, right? And they're going to try to push that more, have that kind of, I think, difference. And then what'll happen, I think, is eventually it'll start to come back together. It'll start to evolve. And I think jiu-jitsu will just be jiu-jitsu. And I think that it will be, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen competitively. People are going to see, hey, the schools that, uh, that allow their students to cross train and don't claim to have super secrets anymore are doing better than the schools that, like, never cross train with anybody. Everybody trains with the same style. Everybody does the exact thing as the coach. And eventually people will adapt or die, but I think we're a little bit away from that happening.
I think actually you kind of say that, like, bow to a picture of Elio or bow to a picture of Gordon Ryan. You could pretty much just put that as gi and no gi. As
Yeah.
in, you say that up until maybe 6-7 years ago, before you had these personalities really coming through in the no-gi scene, like Craig Jones, Gordon, Gary. Uh, also, you had like, some personalities back in those days. So you had like Eddie Bravo and a few, but mostly all the good no-gi guys were gi guys. So there wasn't really a split between the two. Like Eddie was kind of seen as a anomaly. But now, because you have all these guys coming through no-gi are so technical with the leg lock game, it's almost left no-gi jiu-jitsu as irrelevant. I think that's why you suddenly had this kind of knee-jerk reaction from the IBJJF of, oh no, we're going to let you do leg locks now at whatever level it eventually turns out to be. Because there has been that sudden schism of these personalities kind of driven this new, especially when you then want to see what made them this way. So you hear Lachlan talking, you hear Danaher talking, and they're quite conceptually driven as well as coaches. I think you kind of touched on it there. Like you do have this split already of gi jiu-jitsu, which is maybe in some ways going maybe try and hold on to the traditional side of things, and then like anti-leg lock almost, and then just go no-gi is just going to go nuts. Like no-gi jiu-jitsu, like no-gi IBJJF, if it didn't have the leg lock introduction, I think would just be the most irrelevant part of this sport, like completely. Like why no one would train it at all.
Man, I think that is I think, like I said, I think it's going to mesh a lot more. I think that they'll probably always keep reaping and heel hooks out of the gi for the IBJJF. But I think that seeing that, I mean, just seeing how much a few guys getting heel hooks, how much that changed the IBJJF. The IBJJF would have never allowed people to do heel hooks, right?
You go back to like our days. You said, "Oh, the IBJJF gonna let heel hooks." Like, no.
Yeah, that's a lie. And now they do, and so I think that that's going to keep happening. But I do think that there is going to be still a big push towards us against them. What they're doing is not the gi guys are boring and looking for advantages. All the no gi guys do is leg locks. I think that there's going to be a push towards those things. And I think it's eventually, I think that it will mesh together again. But it's just, I think as humans, we just love choosing sides and saying like, this side is relevant and this side is not. This is right and this is wrong.
Oh, this is going to be then like, again, because I love your how you work on these ideas, and like how you are more philosophical with your jiu-jitsu than straightforward, just like no technique only. How do you then marry the two ideas together, that you're going to have these two, even in jiu-jitsu, you're going to have these two very distinct styles, even in the same gym? You're going to have gi, which is IBJJF, no reaping, no whatever, and no-gi, which is now an entirely different sport, yet it still falls under the same flag. How do you go about teaching that in the same gym? How do you marry those two ideas together when they are becoming two different sports? Will we see it become two different styles of gyms?
I don't know. I think I really think that the best way, this is just in my opinion, like on how I try to handle it at my gym. Because I think anyone smart has been able to see this coming for a few years, that some of these no-gi only guys were doing much better competitively in no-gi. And so the whole argument of, if you train in the gi, you'll be the best no-gi guy. That's obviously been shown to not be true, because you have guys that are winning ADCC that never train in the gi anymore. And so what I found is like the way to combat it, at least for me right now, is having concepts that work through both, right?
Yeah.
Having That's really, uh, I think that's really why I have, as a coach, I have been pushed more towards conceptual teaching, is because I have some guys that are big and police officers, and they are
Mm,
trying to use jujitsu to apprehend someone.
mm,
And then in the same class, I have someone who is small and a competitor, and he's trying to use jujitsu to win competitions. And so how can you teach both of those? I don't think that just having a one size fits all, this is how I do jujitsu, this is how you should do jujitsu. I don't think that that is I don't think that's the way to do it. I think the way to do it is to show them why things work, and then allow them to start to create their own, create their own jujitsu, and create their own, I guess, games in jujitsu. And so I think that is still going to be the way. I think there may be a day, like for my gym specifically, that I will have someone that is maybe the full-time nogi coach, maybe if they're
mm.
really, really focused on it. Um, but you know, a lot of my guys that are pretty heavy nogi still enjoy coming in and training in the gi. And so it's
Yeah.
just as of right now, I haven't had to do that, but I wouldn't be surprised if one day in the future that is just how I had to adapt, my gym.
Well, this is what it's really interesting, like hearing you talk. And this is one of the main reasons that I kind of, even though as podcasters know, I really want to get you on early, is again your approach to all this and your adaptability into in jiu-jitsu is that you I've seen the same issue I've had, and you've gone the exact same way with it. Is I've had dormant bouncers come to me and say, right, how do I just throw some dude away who's being an ass at the club? But then you've also got guys who just want to compete in gi, guys who want to compete in no gi of leg locks. How do you, yeah, especially when there's such a a rift in between those three things.
Mhm.
Like back in 10, 15 years ago, like you say, when you was Gracie Jiu-Jitsu was self-defense with some competition. No-gi was all run by gi guys. I mean, I actually remember, I think the year, you could almost like pinpoint a year when everything changed, and it was 2013, is because back in 2011, I went to the ADCC because it was in the UK, Nottingham, which isn't far from where I am right now. And the winners of that ADCC were Gaval, gi guy, Braulio, gi guy, Marcelo was there, gi guy, Rafa Mendes, gi guy. Then you had 2013 come around, and half those guys disappeared. And all of a sudden, you had these different names coming through. And then 2015, 2017, those no-gi guys started to appear more. And then Polaris, Metamaris, and all those started to come through. It's like, right, wow, this is a whole new game. So you almost put it down to that single year, like jiu-jitsu just changed. Because the old guard kind of retired. And so, yeah, pre 2013, it was gi. That was it. You had because gi would solve your no gi would solve your self defense. It's like that one hat ruled all. And now there's been such a rift in between these three different things that people want. Like, how do I look after myself in a social environment? How do I fight in the gi without breaking any of these arbitrary rules? Then how do I fight in no gi and get to the ADCCs? Like, I'm only one man teaching only one club. Like, what am I supposed to do? And so having to find answers that answer fundamental grappling questions seems to be the most logical way through, instead of seeing them all as different, even though they've kind of branched out on their own little ways. And I say it's just really interesting to hear you talk about these, that you've kind of seen the same thing. Like you just said, like, you've got super small guys who are competing, then you got really big guys who just were police officers. Like, exactly. How do you manage all those needs? and you adapt, and you've hit the same conclusion that I have conceptually, like, because grappling is grappling, no matter which rule set applies. Which is always something that I try and explain to my guys, is that if you understand the fundamental laws of grappling, the only thing that ever changes is the rule set. Now you have this great big mold, which is the art of grabbing another human, and then say, oh, but this time we're going to just grab the upper body and only your clothes, and all of a sudden it morphs into judo. Or I can grab any part of you, but I can't submit you. I have to put you on your back, and it morphs into wrestling. And then you have, I can grab any part of you, I can take you to the ground, but you can still fight back, and it morphs into jiu-jitsu. But it's still just grappling. It never changed. And I think it's just pushing us more now to understand that kind of style versus art kind of conversation. And yeah, it's just like, it's fun to have someone who is 5,000 miles away and 5 hours behind me hit
or
the
6.
exact
Who
same
knows?
ideas. Yeah, who knows? We're gonna find out one day when I fly there, and we're like, I'll give you the feedback of how rough it was.
Yeah, man, that is something that is really that's really cool when it comes to jiu-jitsu is it teaches you to problem solve, right? I think that is the mindset that I probably look at everything in my life through. That's the lens that I look everything in my life through, is asking myself, what is wrong and how do I fix it? How do I figure it out? And for some reason, though, a lot of jiu-jitsu guys, they miss that really valuable lesson. And so when they are losing to leg locks in jiu-jitsu tournaments, well, it's because leg locks are stupid. It's not because this person just has a deeper understanding of leg locks. And so I think it's important as we, do jiu-jitsu, like that's kind of, as you said, we both kind of came to the same or very similar conclusions when it comes to teaching jiu-jitsu, because we're running into the same problems. And so it's interesting to me that, at least that I hear about, less people run into that problem. More people are, are still okay with, hey, this is how things have always been. And so we will not try to, we're not going to try to fix it. Things are good. But I think the more that you get people that have different teaching styles and have different ways of explaining things, I really think, and have different concepts that they're showing, I really think that, as we're kind of back to the last question, I really think that it will be how jujitsu is shared and learned and consumed one day. At least I hope. I think that would be really cool.
I think you also kind of like, considering the title of your podcast is I suck at jiu-jitsu, and the final question you always ask is, how do I suck less at jiu-jitsu, or how do you suck less at jiu-jitsu? I think it's kind of fun that you've kind of circled around onto the main crux of jiu-jitsu there, of you've kind of answered your own question on my podcast, so I'm going to like steal this. So anyone listening, like, Josh sold his own podcast, so I get to steal this one. Don't focus on the fact that of what jiu-jitsu is from a obvious point of view of it's this martial art is the art of problem solving, and that's all it is. And if you can get over that as a white belt, and get over the glitz and glamour, the short Instagram videos, and get over the stylistic differences of self-defense and gi and no gi and leg locks and no leg locks, and trying to find answers to infinite questions that you might want to ask your coach. It all boils down to that exact one thing. This is just problem solving. And the better problem solver I become, the closer I get to black belt. because then by the time I actually become a really good problem solver, I will be a black belt.
Man, that really is all that it is just trying to be a good problem solver, good at question answer. And then when you start to become a good problem solver, problems aren't bad anymore. When I run into a problem in my business, when I run into a problem in one of my business, when I run into COVID outbreak and it happens, and now I have to close my gym down, I wasn't excited about that, but there was a level of interest of, how are my wife and I going to eat? How are we going to do this? How are we going to make money? What could I do to really start to what could I do to really start to uh, grow from this? How can I
Yeah.
solve this problem? Right. And it wasn't you run into so much less panic in life if you just look at things from the perspective of like, oh, I'm a problem solver. And sometimes like I run into problems and I am excited about like, oh, this sucks. What am I going to learn from this? This is going to be interesting. And I think that's something that if more people in jiu-jitsu looked at, the guy that always submits them and didn't say, well, he just beats me, this sucks, he's just stronger than me, and they stopped making an excuse and they started to make it the thought process of, what could I do? Maybe I can't beat him yet, but what could I do to just keep him from submitting me, or just keep him from submitting me for a minute longer than usual? And and just starting to look at that and starting to take those big problems and solve them uh, slowly, I think would be huge.
Oh, completely. And like I say, it's I think getting to that point of your growth in this sport and your point of your jiu-jitsu career, where you actually do make the realization that I think that can be tied into all kind of aspects of it. I mean, the main thing that you always hear is relax. Like, every white belt asks, what's the best advice you can give me? You say relax. And I think saying be a better problem solver is the same answer. Is it's not your physicality that's the problem. It's you're not mentally examining the problem enough. And I think if you can hit that point, then you will have to relax because your body isn't needed anymore. But then once you kind of get more and more experience in problem solving, like I say, this carries on to the rest of your life. There isn't many things then that you can't approach with a jiu-jitsu mindset. I mean, I don't know if I mentioned this in the last podcast, but professionally, I'm a firefighter. That's my day job, and it's a very similar realization as a firefighter. It's not, you're a monkey who goes to put wet things on hot things. You are a problem solver. Someone comes to you with a problem like this has happened, solve it, and you have a toolbox, and you have your toolbox of concepts. And I roughly started both these things at the same time, 12 years ago, and it's amazing that how much as my jiu-jitsu improved, my ability as a firefighter improved, and they coexist. There's a correlation as to why one improved because of the other. It was interesting, like trying to figure out like a overarching topic for this conversation, and I thought I had it down when I first said to you, like, this is what I want to talk about. And I said to you before this started, I was going to be vastly off the mark. Like, me and you were just going to go out to left field and just like rant on about random stuff. And I like how we've settled on, after everything, like the VHS tapes and the schisms in the sport and the bitterness we have to the abundance of information there is these days, like, and what why we started doing what we've both done, of YouTube channels and podcasts and Instagram and everything, like, money aside, we're just trying to make people better problem solvers, and we're just trying to find better ways of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite a sweet kind of title to this whole thing. Like, what's this conversation with Josh about? Just two guys trying to figure out how to make you a better problem solver. So any belt listening to this, try to think of where they are in their jiu-jitsu and how to actually get better at it. Ignore the techniques, ignore the Instagram, ignore all the madness that you have surrounding you. Just become a better problem solver. Look at the problems you have. Don't look at it in a flat, nonsensical way of, I need just more techniques. Like, no, why? What is the actual problem? And if you look at it that way, I'm pretty sure you just become me and Josh eventually. You just morph into us. And eventually we'll just have this like screen of like gallery of people of like, it's almost like the Matrix, like just Agent Smiths. It's like loads of them appearing up on the screens.
I think that is, I really think that is pretty much, even though I may use different analogies, it's pretty much all I talk about on my podcast. It's all I talk about to my students is trying to, it's I always call it question and answer, like first we're trying to ask the right questions. It's hard to ask the right questions at first. Because if you walked into jiu-jitsu school and you had never trained, you would ask really questions that really are, they're not a big deal. What should I wear? What is this? Well, this is guard. What is guard? Right? And you can't be in depth yet with your questions. But first you're trying to learn how to ask the right questions. That's always something that's really exciting, is when a student comes in and says like, oh, why do they keep getting into this space? Why do they keep getting me flat here? And like, oh, that was a good question. That wasn't a question that was so broad, like, how do I stop losing? And it wasn't a question that was so specific, like, what should I do with this grip, right? Because you need to find that balance. If it's too specific, then you only answer one question. If it's too broad, then you can't answer anything. But if you can find that like sweet spot, then you give them the answer, and then it's a lesson that they can use in other spots. But I would say too, when it comes to problem solving, the biggest mistake that I see, besides excuse making, is that people are afraid to not have the answers in any situation, right? Because like when I don't know if schooling is the same for you guys, but for us, it is you take tests, and if you or get the answers right, then you go on to your next grade. If you get the answers wrong, well, you're staying in the same school. You're staying at sixth grade,
I'm pretty
right?
sure we're the same kind of like style of teaching over in this
Yeah.
country.
And so you get that, and you get to this. We teach kids that it is wrong to not know. Oh my gosh, you had the lesson plan. How did you not know? You failed. Now you have to take school over. And you have to retrain people and to say, okay, not only is it okay to not know, you need to find comfort not knowing certain things. Because if not, you're going to create a really small world where you know everything. Right. Well, I know everything from here, so that's all that matters, in jiu-jitsu and in life. But I think people understanding that it is okay to not know, and that should produce kind of the best questions and the best problem solving that you can, I think that's something that it could be so helpful to people, is just understanding like, oh, it's okay that you're a black belt and you keep getting finished with this straight ankle lock. Now you need to know, don't try to say it's because leg locks don't work, or don't try to say it's because of an injury or anything. Just just say, okay, I don't understand this yet. And then learn how to understand it.
I think that's quite interesting. Like you said, that then is that, if you're a black belt who's getting submitted by ankle locks or whatever, is black belts were very few and far between when I started. Like, you had to travel quite a distance to go find one, and now there's 3 in my town. And so to meet one and submit one as a colored belt, I was like, am I God now? Do I get the black belt? But that's the difference between a black belt and a colored belt, is that the black belt will then look at that ankle lock and problem solve the shit out of it, and it won't happen again. Like, natural athlete or not, it'll be gone. And because they can look at that problem holistically, yet the purple belt who gets stuck in an ankle lock probably isn't going to ask the same questions or look for the same answers. Again, that goes back to how do you suck less at jiu-jitsu. Like, the black belt isn't someone who could be athletically better, like the average, gym black belt, but it's definitely someone who can like problem solve and fix that part of jiu-jitsu. I just love, like, again, it's where this is all kind of condensed down to in this podcast, is this idea that how do you suck less at jiu-jitsu? Now, this is pretty much going to be the title of this one. I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu podcast goes to Villaincast. How do you suck less? Just become better at problem solving and asking the right questions. And that's what makes the difference between a white belt and a black belt, athletic or not. It's not about how good you are as a competitor or how good you are athletically or any of those questions. You don't have to go lift more or do any of those kind of nonsensical physical things. I mean, the amount of time I wasted in my 20s thinking that I'd get better at jiu-jitsu if I went on more sprints. Like, no, that was a dumb idea.
Imagine if you spent that time doing jiu-jitsu,
or just like thinking of jiu-jitsu. Just sitting at home just thinking about it, and not just like, oh, I need to know more techniques, just like really deep thinking about it. I probably would have got better. I probably would have like done it in half the time. Like, how stupid of me. To finish up with then, obviously COVID restrictions are easing now, depending on when people listen to this. They may already be gone. What's your plans for this coming year? What do you think will happen in regards to the world of jiu-jitsu? Do you think it will just rebound instantly, or do you think there's going to be an over saturation of people who suddenly looked at the sport and think, oh man, I wish I'd done that when I could have, or nothing noticeable?
So let me start with this. I can at least go with what's happening now at my school,
Mm-hmm.
right? So technically speaking, it's still illegal to be doing jiu-jitsu, but
Yeah.
it is not. It's interesting. It's getting to a point of, and we were doing it. Don't get me wrong, we were doing it when it was super illegal, and it was like, you're gonna get tickets, you're gonna go to jail. But I have some police officers at my gym that were like, hey, you'll be good. Don't worry about it. We'll just keep the blinds closed. You'll be fine. And
Not to incriminate anyone. Not to incriminate anyone or anything, like,
No.
Law.
It did. Yeah, it did. That didn't happen. But anyway, so as things have I would say they've eased up in how much people care in my area right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of people that are really excited to just do something. And I have actually, normally I like run ads at my gym, and I have not run any ads because I mean, it's illegal. So I'm trying to not run ads for something that's illegal to do.
Yeah.
But I haven't run any ads, and the amount of people that I've had to come into my gym, just walk in and say, hey, I want to try this, has been really, really big. It's been a lot more than, it really has. And I think it's because I think there's still a percentage of people that are still very afraid. I think there's a percentage of people that will get vaccinated and still won't go outside. I think that is going to happen. but I don't think that percentage is 50%. I think that percentage is very small. I think most people, um, a lot of people look at it as they lost a year of their physical life, or their life that they would be able to do something physically, and they have sat at home and thought about, man, I could have went and tried out jujitsu like I always wanted to, and now it's not available. And then when it becomes available again, I think that people are going to jump on it. Just like they do it in sales sometimes where they take the offer
Yeah.
off the table. They say, no, the house is sold. And you're like, man, I would have given you so much more money for that house. And like,
Yeah,
oh,
of
well, the
course.
house is back on. And it's like, I think it's the same. I think that's going to happen with a lot of different people. I really think jujitsu will get a spike in the amount of people doing it because people sat home all day. They listened to Joe Rogan and Jocko talk about jujitsu,
Yeah.
and now they're saying, "Hey, well, now maybe we could start to, I could try this out as soon as I can." And when the opportunity presents itself, I think a lot of people are going to jump on it.
That's gonna be a really interesting year. I think again, I love watching all your stuff on Instagram. You're probably the most optimistic person in jiu-jitsu. Like the happiest making up on Instagram. Yeah, I think I've reached a similar conclusion of like the amount of interest I've and messaging, even from like students I haven't heard in like 4 or 5 years who disappeared off the map. All of a sudden they're just messaging me like, when's it reopening? I'm like, I have no more information than you do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it has made me quite optimistic for the future. I think there'll be a great rebound on the way. Benefit from COVID if there is such a thing. This has been great. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Josh. Hopefully, if anyone can catch us, I'll be heading over to see Josh hopefully in the summertime, along with my US tour. So if you're anywhere in America, I've heard it's quite a small country.
It's
Please,
tiny. It's tiny.
yeah,
You could throw a rock across it.
yeah, I've heard things like that. So yeah, if you're anywhere in North America, like north of Mexico to I don't know south of the Arctic Circle, come check it out, and hopefully the other way around. I think Josh may be coming to visit the UK either tail end of this year or beginning of next. I think you mentioned something last time. So yeah, when he eventually makes his way over, I'll be definitely hosting him. So come check him out then. Definitely check out his podcast, I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu. It's incredibly informative. He has the right people on. He's asking the right questions and always trying to find the right feedback. Check out his Instagram. He adds some stuff daily. I know I pestered you recently saying because you put up a video regarding symmetry in jiu-jitsu. I was like, dude, I've literally done the same video on this. So he's always got great content going up, and yeah, he's just a really great guy to follow. So yeah, thank you, Josh McKinney.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. And then also, hopefully, when you come visit, we can film a course with my company, Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu.
That'd be bonkers good. I don't think you can quite get how excited I am to actually do that. So yeah, as long as the world kind of rebounds to something looking like normality, I will see you in the summer, dude.
All right, sounds good, man.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.